Emma, welcome to my YouTube channel. Emma is from Australia and she is friends with Lonnie, and we were just in contact with each other through email. So I'm excited to hear her story. So without further ado, Emma, how did the Jehovah's Witnesses come into your life and your story as a Jehovah's Witness?
My parents come into the organization when I was a little girl through my dad's mother. So she was a witness, but my dad was never baptized. And then when my mum come into the family, she started asking questions with my grandmother, and so it's actually started through my mum. And then both my parents got baptized when I was a little girl. But yeah, for like most of my like young witness life, we were mostly like an inactive family. Like we weren't like the spiritual kind of strong people or anything like that. Yeah, that's kind of my early witness life. Always believed in Jehovah, loved Jehovah. And even when we weren't going to meetings, like we were still witnesses, like we never celebrated birthdays or Christmases and, things like that. And then, yeah, we were kind of, we would go to the meetings for a little bit. And then, both my parents were really young and they were young parents of young children. And there's a lot of expectations put on witness family. So I can understand what they were under now, a lot of pressure and all that. So like, I understand now, but at the time, like I was always worried we would not make it into the new world or the new system, things like that. So yeah.
Okay, and then that takes you into your teens and preteens. At what age then did you
Yeah.
get baptized?
So my dad actually got disfellowshipped when I was about 12, and then my parents broke up. And at the time, my mum was a single mum of 4 kids. So you can imagine the situation that she was in. And she just felt like at the time there wasn't a lot of support for single parents. Like they didn't really fit in the congregation. And I think she felt quite discouraged over that. So we stopped going to the meetings for a few years. My dad was disfellowshipped. And then probably when I was about 14 or 15, my dad decided to go back to the organization. And so he started taking us 4 kids. And then so that's when we started really getting into like an active family, active witness family. And then it would have been it's a long story, but there was a time there where I stopped going to the meetings as well. Like I don't know what you'd call it. Mum never came back. She remained inactive. And then, yeah, I just was studying on and off for a few years. And it wasn't until I moved to the Gold Coast. That's when I was like 21, moved to the Gold Coast, started getting involved in the local congregation there. And then I was baptized 9 months later. So I was actually baptized as an adult. Yeah.
At 21, you got baptized.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that
22. Just, yeah.
that's
Yeah.
wild. And your father was active and your mother was inactive,
Yeah. So my dad did get reinstated
right?
when I was about 15 or 16, I think he was. And then, yeah, bouts of inactivity there as well.
And your
Yeah.
siblings, what was that like? Were they attending to the meetings as well, or were they doing their own thing?
Yeah. So me and my brother, the next one down, he actually like used to come to meetings a lot as well. But he stopped going when he was about maybe 18 because he's gay. So he kind of realized quickly there's no room for gay people in the congregation and things like that. So he kind of left for that reason. And then my 2 younger siblings never were really that fully indoctrinated because by the time my dad was disfellowshipped and reinstated, they were still quite young. And so they stopped going when they were little as well.
So you were the only one that was active who got
Yeah.
baptized.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. What inspired you to get baptized and stay active or get reactive with when your dad got active in the religion?
I think I really did love Jehovah. I really did love the Bible. Like the Bible to me was in like, if the Bible said this, then that was it, you know what I mean? So I think it was just that respect for the Bible. And also to the congregation, when I moved to the Gold Coast, the congregation that I got involved with were amazing. Like they were the most beautiful people. And looking back now as someone who's awake, I can see the the hook, like I can see, I was down there by myself with a friend at the time. And yeah, like I just was like this amazing people that took me in like family, like a lot of these people became sisters. Like I had best friends that I lived with and people that took me into their home. So they become like aunties and uncles and grandparents, so that was definitely a big part of it as well, I think. Yeah, but also I just love being a witness, I think, like, to be honest with you, at the time.
Okay, so you sound like you had some really good moral support and some friends in the religion.
Yes.
Then became
Yeah.
a family, especially really enticing if you have a discombobulated family where your parents are divorced and your siblings are all over the place. I can totally.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that? Because you said you're 31 now, right? So that was about a 10-year experience between
Yeah.
when you got baptized to now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was on the Gold Coast as an active Jehovah's Witness for until 2019. And I actually started pioneering, like regular pioneering there. There was a big support, very active Jehovah's Witness community on the Gold Coast. And so there was a lot of support there and people would auxiliary pioneer all the time. I was just a part of like a really fun congregation, And at the end of 2019, I kind of just felt like I needed a change, something different. And looking back now, I can see where I was probably starting to wait, like something wasn't quite right. I wasn't feeling spiritually fulfilled as I should have been as a regular pioneer. I wouldn't have said it in that language at the time, but now I can see, you know. And so I had a friend who was in Dublin, Ireland at the time, and she was in the Filipino congregation. And so I like said to her, like, can I just come stay with you for a couple of weeks until I get a job in my own place? And so I got like a 1-year working visa and I went over to Dublin, Ireland. And yeah, and like it was, I love Ireland, I love the Irish people. But when you get to Ireland, it's very like the witnesses there are extremely different to the witnesses that I was, used to. Um, First of all, there's not actually a lot of Irish Jehovah's Witnesses. Really, like it's most like from my experience being in Dublin, it was mostly foreign language or it was English families that had come over in the 60s and 70s and 80s to help with the territory. So I thought that was kind of, yeah, I was kind of expecting more Irish people, but there wasn't. And I was like, oh, does that mean like there's more preaching work to be done? Like, things like that and then, yeah, so I was there all through the pandemic and I actually couldn't get home. But it was probably just as the pandemic started, and the meetings all went to Zoom, we stopped going out preaching, things like that. I think it was the first time in my whole life that I had actually sat still and really thought about things that were coming up about my belief system. Because over the years, I think there was certain things that used to not make sense to me, but I would kind of squash it down because I believed in the Bible or, Armageddon's coming, just look at the state of the world. You know what I mean? Like I would kind of reason myself into that. And then during the pandemic, there was just, I really sat with a lot of things that were going on. And I probably, realized that a lot of my beliefs just didn't make sense. And it was really terrifying. Like I didn't know what was happening to me. This probably started in June of 2020. I started to really think about like, how bad does the world have to get before Jehovah starts to intervene? And I'm like, well, it got really bad in World War One, and he still didn't intervene. It got really bad in World War Two, Holocaust, all these terrible things that have happened over the years, and that's still not bad enough for God to intervene. And I was just like this, just things like this, and I really started to think about it. And then, you also think about the time limit of, say humans have only been on this earth for 7,000 years. And like, that's a lot of bad things that have happened in 7,000 years. And it's all because God wants to prove a point to Satan. And little things like that, like all these, I don't know, like reasonings that I just couldn't wrap my head around anymore. Like the reasoning is like I admitted to myself that something's not right here. And I just, went down this terrifying spiral. I don't even know what you'd call it, but it was just, I didn't know if I was being like attacked by demons. Like, why was I having doubts? I was doing everything right. I was reading my Bible, I was praying, and I just didn't understand while I was spiraling in the inner turmoil of waking up was, devastating.
June 2020, this was all happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
Were you doing any research online, or what were you talking to different people?
No, I didn't say anything to anyone because I didn't know I didn't know what was going on. And I was actually online looking at like mainstream Christianity evidence for the Bible, and I was looking at pastors online because I felt like my faith in God was that bad that I needed assistance because the Jehovah's Witness articles just weren't cutting it anymore. So I actually never looked at Jehovah's Witness apostate stuff until later, like about 6 months later, because I was terrified. I was so scared. I didn't understand why it was happening to me, and my whole worldview comes crashing down. Everything that you build your life on, and it was all out the window, like, but I was trying to hold on to it at the same time, and it wasn't until probably August of 2020 I accidentally stumbled across this Instagram post by this, I've never heard of him, John Steingard, and he's an ex-Christian, and he used to be a part of a band, like a Christian band. And in his post, it had gone all over the news because it was like another Christian had left the faith, kind of a thing. And so I stumbled across his Instagram post, and when I was reading it, it was like he had taken everything that I was feeling and wanted, and all my thoughts, and had written it down. Like I couldn't believe what I was reading back to myself. I thought I was reading my own thoughts back to myself. And the only reason I kind of had an idea of what was going on with me was because he used the word deconstruction at the end of it, like deconstruction. And it was only from there that I started listening to podcasts where people had come out of other religions and how terrifying it had been for them, and that they had used, they were deconstructing their beliefs. And that's when I realized, like, I'm not being attacked by demons. Like, I'm not some faithless, godless woman. Like, what I'm experiencing, a lot of people experience.
And this was like in the pandemic, you were home by yourself, you were doing all of this research, and I can imagine it was very scary, as you said, feeling
It was,
very alone. And you said you weren't talking to anyone at this time.
No.
When did you start talking to your mom about it? Because I know you said that she's been inactive from way back after, from your parents, when your parents got divorced.
Yeah. So I would have rang her in the November of 2020. So because I actually couldn't get back home. I was trying to get on repatriation flights back to Australia, but the flights kept getting cancelled, and they were really full at the time. So I just couldn't get home. And so I was happy in Dublin, but it was very isolating. And so I just rang my mum 1 November. I can't remember the day, but I told her, and she just said to me, has something happened? Like, she thought maybe I had a fallout with someone. And I said, no. I said, it's not that at all. I said, it's nothing anyone's ever done. I said, it's just, I've got all of these, I've come to the conclusion that I don't think I believe it anymore. And it was really upsetting. Like, I think she was really upset because at that time she would have been like a physically out but mentally in still. So she still had the beliefs there. But she's a really understanding person. And so she was like, okay, well, like, you know, are you going to come home? Like, I'm trying to get home to start a new life, because I was in such limbo as well over there, because I didn't tell any of the witnesses over there what was happening
And
until the end.
your friend that you were
Yeah.
living with, how is that going?
Well, she actually moved out in the June. So she moved out, and then I had some kind of conversations with her, but as far as she was concerned, I still believed in God and the Bible. But yeah, it was very isolating. Like, I felt like I had no one I could talk to, and like I felt horrible inside. Like, you know, I'd be walking down the street and like I would just feel like, what is this? Like, what am I? Like, we're like spinning around the sun. What's this all about? Like, if there's no God, no Jehovah, this doesn't make sense. Like, and it was really scary for me. I felt like, what's the point? Because your whole purpose and hope is just taken.
I totally understand. I was right there as well. I then, so this was November. I spoke to your mom, and I know Australia has some really strict guidelines when it came to entering the country and leaving the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At what point then were you able to go home?
Yeah, it would have been May 2021. I finally got on a repatriation flight back home, and but I still hadn't told any of my Jehovah's Witness friends yet. And so I had like one of my best friends who was like a sister to me. I thought, you know, this is probably going to be the last time I ever see her again. So I went and saw some people that I really loved, because I'm like, eventually I'm going to have to tell them that I don't believe in this anymore. So yeah, I caught up with a few witness friends, and that was the last I ever saw of most of them.
How did that go?
Um, because I didn't tell them, I just hung out with them like I would, like, you know, because we hadn't seen each other for a couple of years. It was, yeah, it was sad. I think more sad for me because I knew, like, you know, not only is your whole worldview coming apart, and you lose your hope and you lose God, it's like, okay, yeah, just remember you're going to lose everyone that you ever love as well, because disbelieving is like the worst thing that you can do as a witness. It's one of the worst things, you know? So.
And at that point, what happened? This was the summer of 2021.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So yeah, sorry.
What unfolded after that?
So I ended up coming back to my hometown, out of all places, a place I never thought I'd end up, but I did. And so I ended up coming back to my family and just reconnecting with like worldly family, and you know, which was really nice, and old schoolmates, and it was just nice to do that. And I think after I'd had some kind of a, not a safety net, but just accepting that, you know, everyone's gonna probably not want to have anything to do with me. I ended up writing like a letter on my iPhone, like just explaining why I don't believe anymore. Like, I try to be non-threatening as much as possible. Like, I never put any apostate stuff in it or anything like that. It was just why I no longer believed. And I sent that letter out to a few of my really close friends. Some actually, most of the responses were actually quite nice, and they were just like, look, we'll always be here if you ever want to return to Jehovah. And then some responses were very like, you know, did you know, as you could imagine, like they felt threatened, you know, which I understand. I was there, you know. And so yeah, after that I come out, told everyone, and kind of had to learn to live my life as someone who's just not a witness from that point on.
So then you faded. You didn't write any letter to disassociate yourself.
So what happened was when I was in Dublin, I did actually meet the two elders probably a little bit later, probably maybe at the end of the year of 2020. And I just said to them, like, look, this is how I feel. This is the situation. I was distraught. I was very, very distraught. And they kind of both, they were quite good, but like they just showed me some scriptures and things like that. And one always would try and check up on me, like one of the elders. But I had just gotten to a point where I was like, I ended up just blocking everybody in Dublin. Like I just had to for my own, I don't know, sanity or something, because I just couldn't, it was hard enough admitting it to myself than having to explain while I'm no longer going to the meetings or no longer on Zoom, or, you know, on the ministry and things like that. So, yeah, that would have been the elders. Yeah, told the elders. And so by the time I'd gotten back to Australia, no one knew that I was back home, pretty much.
And in the 2 years since you've been back and confronting all the friends, what has your life been like?
You know, I've definitely struggled with the spirituality side of things, and like it is very hard when you go from thinking that God is looking out for you and your family and your loved ones, and that no matter what happens in the world, God is there for you, and that gets taken away from you, you know, in your worldview. That's been a big struggle of mine. But I think one thing that's really helped is, yeah, probably reconnecting with my family. Like my mum, she's now fully awake. Like she doesn't believe in any of it anymore, which is really nice to, you know, to be inactive for so long but still believe in it. That would be, takes its toll after a while. And yeah, I've just been able to read lots of books and about things that I'm curious about, and that, you know, open my mind a little bit, and see other people's perspectives on how they view the world. And yeah, like I'm in my second year of university now. I never thought I'd go to uni, and I'm actually surprised that I've even made it this far. Like it's, you just don't realize how limited you are when you're in that organization. You don't realize how limited you are. Yeah.
And the aspect of being able to learn about anything you want and
That's the best. Yeah.
any topic you want for as long
Yeah.
as you want, go down all the rabbit
Mhm.
holes and not feel
Yeah.
guilty about it. It's like the best
Yes.
thing ever. If you want to,
Yeah,
yeah, it's such a great feeling. So what are you going to
it
school
is.
for?
Teaching
Very cool. What are you trying to, what subject are you trying to be a teacher for?
history and ethics.
I love it, coming from a religious background. What a great topic.
It's actually been the ethics bit. It's actually been really interesting because I'm like, a lot of the stuff, I'm like, I get this. It's like, yep, I used to be this person, and I understand where these people are coming from. So it's nice to have something where I'm comfortable with to, you know, study in that. But yeah,
Wow. Thank you so much, Emma, for sharing your story. Love the ending. I'm so happy that you have gone back to school. You're still fairly young, so it's a great thing that you're really taking advantage of all that. Is there anything that you have left out in your interview that you want to share with my audience?
oh gosh, probably just, I don't know. I think when you're waking up, that terrifying, scary feeling. I don't know if this is where you're going, but like you will get past it. It doesn't last for very long. Like, because I remember being in the midst of really scared, like not knowing how to see life or anything, and you think you're always going to be in it, but you do come out the other side. And I think, yeah, that's probably what I'd like to share. That you don't always feel like that forever.
Very, very true. The super scariness just kind of subsides, and you have to figure things out like any other
Mhm.
person in the world, and that can feel
Yes.
scary, but it's part of life
Yeah.
outside of any religious group. Just
Yeah.
critical thinking and thinking for yourself. It's
That's right.
a new concept that
Absolutely.
we aren't allowed to do. So just have fun with it. That's what I say.
Yes.
Get curious, have fun with it, question everything until it feels right for you. How do you know that? you'll figure it out. It's something
Yes,
we're born with innately, is to connect with our intuition, which is completely a new concept for the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses once they leave.
that's right. It is. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Emma, again for sharing your story. Really appreciate it. I know a lot of people can relate to your story. It's super relatable. So thank you again, and thank you for watching.